Imagine this. You're a Russian indie game developer who also owns a game studio named Dynamic Pixels. This studio was made in 2004 in Russia. You create many games before your absolute hit, being over 50 in total, but they don't receive that much publicity from the media. You were a small studio living from small successes instead of big blockbuster hits. You had no financial troubles, but you weren't really that successful either. Eventually, you start thinking of a game that is completely different from all other games you made so far. You start partnering up with another studio named Tiny Builds to promote this game, one forwarded towards PC and console players instead of mobile ports, which was originally what your team specialized in. Eventually, the pre-alpha to the game was released. Fans adored it, saying that it was funny, scary, and exciting all at the same time. You made merch from it, costumes, sold tons of game copies and plushies. It was amazing, a real one-hit wonder that your team always wanted, but eventually, over time, it became a disappointment for fans to bear witness to. This is Buff Ben, and today, we're going to get into the real problems with Hello Neighbor. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. The first chapter of this journey was released to the public on September 29th, 2016, the date in which the pre-alpha to the game was released. It was initially only given to a few selected YouTubers as part of a marketing campaign to further popularize the game. Eventually, it was given to the public a few weeks later on the date shown. Anyways, the pre-alpha was clearly not the full version of the game. It had obvious bugs and glitches, very little content to explore, which means it could be completed in a couple of minutes, had unfinished visuals, and the neighbor was stupid sometimes, constantly running into the walls or getting stuck. Despite these flaws, fans still loved the pre-alpha and almost saw these problems as funny and entertaining instead of boring and unappealing. They saw the vision of what the developers were going for and they were all down for it. Sure, it was a little bit annoying, but again, this was just the start of the game before it was actually released and was only made for testing purposes. It made sense, there were bound to be some problems. Fans hoped that they could learn from the pre-alpha and make these problems disappear in the future. Or could they? The official alpha of Hello Neighbor came out on October 26, 2016, and it offered many improvements from before. Although the gap between pre-alpha and alpha were only 4 weeks, there were many factors not included from before. The neighbor's house was bigger and had more rooms to explore in. The AI of the neighbor was slightly better at adapting to the player's moves. The game had better polished visuals and they added more game mechanics so players could have more options to play with. They also increased the length and playability by making the alpha longer than it was before, since you needed to do more things in order to find out what's in the neighbor's basement. But of course, there were still many problems in the game. It was still buggy and crashed sometimes for some players. Its lore was a bit confusing and had players shaking their heads at the end of the chapter. The controls were clunky and could use more tampering to make it smoother, and the puzzles, although there were more, felt basic and the same compared to the pre-alpha. To conclude, even though Hello Neighbor's alpha brought more improvements to the game, it still had many flaws to fix. Fans were still happy with the release, but felt as though the developers could have taken their time to properly fix these issues. Hopefully they will in the next alpha. The next official release begins on November 22, 2016. The next alpha, Alpha 2. This alpha made fans have even more hope again for the game, as it included a significantly expanded map, unique puzzles which fans asked for, better visuals and atmosphere, and made the neighbor have more dialogue cues in which he had barely any before. It was also a continuation from where the story left off, meaning that it gave more information about what was going on in the neighbor's house and what he was really doing. There were more tools and items which were fun to experiment with, and the neighbor's AI seemed less dysfunctional than before. But still, there were problems with the game. The neighbor still acts like a 4-year-old toddler, constantly hitting his head against a wall. The game continues to crash unexpectedly when doing certain actions, and the story, although trying to be more developed, still doesn't make a lot of sense for players at the end of the chapter. There were some things that the developers weren't working on, and it was obvious. People started to notice, and although there were more positives than negatives, they felt uncertain where this game would stand in the future. And I guess we already know where it does. Alpha 3 of Hello Neighbor was released on December 22, 2016. a month after Alpha 2 came out. As you can see, these alphas were extremely fast, but that also meant that some problems weren't fixed in time. Some people wish they would take their time so the game could look more furnished, but sadly, they never wanted the flame to go out, so they rushed as fast as they could. Anyways, Alpha 3 came out with an even more expanded environment, making the neighbor's house the biggest we've seen so far. The game looked more polished on controls, and the scenery was more appealing with better graphics. They improved the sound design, the neighbor's AI, game mechanics, and puzzles. But of course, there were still problems. Wanna guess the first one? That's right, the neighbor still acts like he has the IQ of a rock. Crashes were less evident, but still existed commonly, and the narrative somehow still made no sense even though fans were trying to piece it together. They were still improving on the game slowly at a time, but they could seriously have stopped even just for 1 month so that the game could truly be at its best. To summarize, the Alpha 3 brought even more improvements from Alpha 2, although it still had lingering effects from the first pre-alpha from before. Surprisingly, Alpha 4, which was the last alpha of Hello Neighbor, came out on May 4th, 2017, 6 months after Alpha 3. I guess they were actually listening to fans this time, and they took their sweet time with it. Alpha 4 actually had the goal of making the game better for players of the game. It had the biggest map of the entire game yet. I mean, seriously, it was absolutely huge. Not only that, but Alpha 4 made huge improvements on the graphics and control of the game, making it smoother and more appealing to actually play. The neighbor's AI wasn't acting like an absolute watermelon when he was chasing you, which was needed for quite some time, and the overall game felt more complete, having a wider range of tools, mechanics, areas, and polished animations. Overall, the Alpha 4 was very successful and almost had no flaws. I mean, sure, bugs still existed, but they were microscopic compared to before. It was the perfect ending to Hello Neighbor, except it wasn't. Although the game mechanics were improved upon, the story was still confusing as ever, even with the ending. This left players with a lack of closure and almost unhappy. I mean, come on, they waited and played all the alphas start to finish, and the story still made no sense? I mean, surely they weren't just gonna release more games, right? Well, I'm not even surprised that they went with this route at this point, but after Hello Neighbor ended, you know what they wanted? Sequels. More and more sequels. The first was Hello Neighbor Hide and Seek, which was actually a good game. It was released on December 8th, 2018, making the lore of the story understandable and making references to the first game make sense. However, after this game, it seriously started going downhill. If we're going with the sequel of the game, Hello Neighbor 2, this really sucked. Sorry to say it, but it really was bad. It was released on December 6, 2022, and it was a pricey and buggy mess. It was absolutely nothing like the first Hello Neighbor game. Instead of one house to investigate in, you had an entire neighborhood with multiple houses. This wasn't bad, but I definitely think that people liked how there was only one house you had to check in the game. It was simple and made sense for players, but adding more and more made it complicated, almost like a chore when traveling between houses. Not only that, but damn, this game was pricey, being about $40, but that's kinda crazy since it's a worse version than the original. It even made 3 DLCs, which I still think are unplayable to this very day, being a buggy mess just like its original game. If you wanted to buy the entire game, it would cost about $80 plus tax, and it's still a buggy mess for each DLC and the main game. I don't even think you could finish it. The truth is, it sucked and lost most of its player base after this. Seriously, what were they thinking with this game? This is the part of the video where I state the games that either were unimportant or useless to the main story. The first game is Secret Neighbor, which came out after Hide and Seek. The reason why it wasn't added was because it was just a multiplayer horror game and offered no real lore to the story, or at least not that much. It was well received for the most part, but this one not so much. The second game is Hello Guest, which was basically the pre-alpha to Hello Neighbor 2. Since Hello Neighbor 2 sucked, of course Hello Guest did too. It was repetitive, it was too different from the first Hello Neighbor, and overall made no sense story-wise or gameplay-wise. It was truly just a failure that made another failure. In conclusion, Hello Neighbor, although it had its troubles, was a beloved game by fans and actually had hope in progressing over time. However, after many inconveniences with bug issues and sequels, it eventually fell out of the public light. What did we learn? That Hello Neighbor could have been something if it didn't fall to glitches, greedy sequels, and unethical updates. This is the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe or watch my other videos. I upload content daily and I will not disappoint you. I know I kind of missed yesterday's upload, but I promise I will always be consistent. This is Buff Ben, and I will see you next time. See ya.
Luces